you?
Oh, you know, I'm busy. But I'm good. I'm not on the beach today. I turned it off the other day because it was doing weird things and I couldn't see myself.
Oh,
But
well,
it turned off.
it does.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I mean, you know, as long as you're inside today, it's got to be more pleasant, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna change.
So our son is supposed to have baseball practice after school, and we're like, really? Yeah. Okay, can she see all the things?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
It's
just really hard to hear you, and
it's hard to hear me.
Let me pause that.
Hello. You know I love seeing your pretty faces, so thank you. And Jenny, you tell me when to start. Hello. Okay. I'm going to get started, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, cool. So I am Krista with eReal America, and I'm here for our last class. Can you believe this? This is class number 6, which I know in teacher world, that means we're ending the end of the school year, which I know is kind of like, woohoo! So what I wanted to do for you today is we wanted to do snacks and sweet treats, real food style, and kind of throw in how we can do snacks and sweet treats real food style and help dodge disease. And so, of course, if we were all sitting in the same room and I said, raise your hand and tell me how many of you love sweets, half the room would raise their hand, Jenny. And then, of course, if I ask, like, how many people love salty stuff more, typically the other half is raising their hand and waving at me. And so there's kind of this balance with having sweet treats once in a while, but having really good snacks that might be more on the savory side. So I'm going to show you both today. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to make some banana ice cream, AKA nice cream, if you've ever heard it called that. And then we're going to do some sweet and spicy roasted nuts. And then we're going to make homemade hummus and turn it into a layered Mediterranean dip. Then we're going to make probably one of my favorite things right now, chocolate peanut butter cups. And then I'm gonna throw a spring salad in at the end for you just because I can't resist. So the first thing that I want to show you is the nice cream. And so I'm gonna actually mix it up in my Ninja. So if you have a food processor or a really decent blender, either one would work. Now, this is confession time. So the first time that I froze bananas, you all are gonna laugh hysterically at me. I did not peel them. Obviously, I don't know what I was thinking, but it did not dawn on me to not peel the banana. I just threw it in the freezer. Now, have you ever tried to peel a frozen banana? Now, if you have, you're gonna know how ridiculous that was. So, lesson learned. If you go to freeze bananas, please peel them first because this recipe does require frozen bananas. But this is the beautiful thing, this habit that I did not have before. You know how the bananas are sitting out on your counter and they're turning brown and they're turning brown, and then that one day you walk by them and you can barely squeeze them and they're just mush and you throw them in the trash. Okay, we've all been there and done that. So when you're walking by those bananas and they're starting to turn brown, and even if they've gotten to that like soft point where you're like, let's be honest, nobody's gonna eat these, they're too soft, I want you to peel them and I want you to put them in a Ziploc bag and throw them in the freezer. And then you will have them ready to make banana ice cream. Actually, we have other things. Like I've even done the trick of our chocolate chip banana bread. I didn't have any bananas, but I had frozen ones. frozen bananas actually, if you let them thaw a little bit, that's the perfect trick when you need a banana and you don't have one. Now, I will tell you what I like to do when I freeze them is I like to break them in half when I throw them in the bag, because then I can easily look at it and go, okay, that's one banana. Now what Zanya, the nutritionist that I work with, what she likes to do is she likes to slice them and then lay them flat in her bag, and then she just marks on the bag how many bananas were in there. And so in my opinion, I just think breaking them in half, it's easy for me to tell how many bananas, and we go. So these bananas have just been sitting out about 10 to 15 minutes, but they're still pretty frozen. So this recipe calls for 3 frozen bananas. So that's what's in here. We're gonna dump it all in. Now, I also have to tell you, the first time that we tried banana ice cream, this was years and years ago. All we did was took frozen bananas and we blended it up. Now, I love bananas, but I was like, that is not ice cream. Like, that tasted like frozen bananas. And, you know, I just wasn't overly impressed by it. And then Zanya came to me and she said, we need to do a coaching tip, and I think we should add ice cream to the website. And I was like, oh, and so we researched it and looked into it a little bit more. I will tell you, the key to banana ice cream is adding a little milk. So we're gonna add 1/4 cup. This is unsweetened almond milk. We're gonna dump that in. And then we're actually gonna toss in a little vanilla. So this is vanilla concentrate. So the recipe calls for about 1/2 teaspoon. I'm only adding about 1/4 teaspoon. This is just vanilla concentrate from the Spice Merchant. So this version that we're gonna do mixed berry. And so I just have a cup of just mixed frozen berries. So there's strawberries, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, and we're gonna dump that in. And those have also been just sitting out for about 10 to 15 minutes. Because it makes it a little bit easier to blend, and it won't be quite so thick. And I would want you to have your almond milk or your milk handy, because depending on your consistency preference, you may have to add a little bit more milk. So we're gonna blend it up. I'm gonna scrape down the sides just a little bit. And see, this is pretty thick, so I'm actually gonna add a little bit more milk. I always tell you to start with 1 to 2 tablespoons at a time, so you don't go from, oh, it was almost there, to now it's liquid. Now it's like chocolate milk. Okay, so now I have to tell you, if you are not a mixed berry fan, we also have a version on the website for chocolates. And the only difference would be, instead of the mixed berries, you would add some cocoa powder in here. And so what I'm gonna do is take a little ice cream cup, and my technical assistant husband does such a good job of like taking all my mess. Okay, so I'm gonna hold this up to the camera so you guys can see. So it is like soft serve ice cream. It is so good. Now you could even take it to the next level and add some fresh berries on top. And I mean, how cute is that for Easter? So we also have a pina colada version on the website, but the chocolate one gets rave reviews. And so the reason I picked the mixed berries, because I'm throwing other chocolate stuff at you, and I didn't want you to think I was a chocolate fanatic, but I kind of am, so just FYI. But the mixed berry version is awesome. Now, we have had people ask if you could make this ahead of time and freeze it, and absolutely, yes, you can. The one thing I would suggest is then pull it out of the freezer and let it sit at room temperature a little bit, and you might dump it in your, like if you had a mini Ninja or your big Ninja, just to blend it up and maybe add a little bit more milk right before you serve it again, just to kind of get it to that soft serve consistency. But definitely worth trying. And the great thing about the mixed berry version and the chocolate version, if you are not a huge banana fan, those other flavors come shining through, and you're not gonna taste that and be like, oh, banana. So I would love for you to try it and see what you think, because that is only a few ingredients. You know exactly what is in that ice cream. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to do for you is, I forgot to turn the oven on before we started. That's okay, it'll get there. We're gonna preheat the oven to 325. And so we are gonna do sweet and spicy mixed nuts. Now, if you guys were paying attention, we recently did a coaching tip on Eat Real America. Well, we did two. The first one we did was on nuts. And then I think it was the week after that, we did the grocery store tour on nuts. So if you have not looked at these past couple coaching tips, I highly recommend that you go back and look at them. Because one of the things that we wanted to do was kind of explain nuts in general. Nuts get a really bad rap because everybody thinks, I mean, if I said, grab some nuts as a snack for you, you're probably gonna think, oh, those are high in fat, and those are high in calories, and I can't have too many. And people kind of freak out when I tell them to enjoy nuts as a snack. But I'm here to tell you that if you enjoy nuts 5 times a week, 5 servings a week, you can drop your risk for coronary artery disease by 20%. Now, when I tell you a serving, that is a handful, like 1/4 a cup. So that is what's considered a serving. I know you're probably thinking, well, I'll have 2 servings today, and then I'll have 2 servings 2 days from now. But anyway, 5 servings a week is a really, really good rule of thumb with nuts. Now, there's something to know, and we included this in the coaching tip about nuts. The best thing to do is just buy raw nuts and then do what I'm gonna show you and add the seasonings to it. Because if you start picking up nuts at the grocery store and looking at the ingredients, I think you're gonna be surprised. For example, there was one that we looked at when we were doing our grocery store tour. It was pecan praline. There was all kinds of stuff going on in there. There was added sugar, and there were all these extra oils. And so what I'm using today is, the ingredients is pecans, and the ingredients is walnuts, and the ingredients is almonds. So they are just the raw nuts. Now, the other thing that I want you to keep in mind is, if you go to buy mixed nuts, absolutely fine. But flip it over and look at the ingredients, because like this version just has peanut oil and salt with the nuts. But I promise you, if you start looking at all the versions, you will see some that have like 6 different kinds of oils, and in most cases, they're using the less quality oil out of all those oils. So definitely just start reading the ingredient label and check out our grocery store tour video on nuts. Okay, so we're gonna do the sweet and spicy nuts. And so in this bowl, I have 1/2 cup of walnuts, pecans, and almonds. And I will tell you, almost every time I make this recipe, I double it because it's so, so good. Now, this is totally personal preference. If you are not a pecan fan, add more walnuts. And it depends on what you like. If you want whole almonds, sliced almonds, slivered almonds, whatever your preference is. Now, the other thing that I'm gonna add is I'm gonna add pepitas, which are pumpkin seeds. And I'm gonna add 1/3 cup of pepitas in here. And I'm also gonna add 1/3 cup of pistachios out of their shell. And like I said, you mix it up and do whatever kind of nuts you like. Now, we're gonna add some seasonings. We're gonna add 1/2 teaspoon of curry powder, 1/2 teaspoon of rosemary, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne. And I promise you, it's not gonna be too overwhelming, like spicy wise. And I've also had some people tell me they freak out about adding that much curry. And then they told me they made it and they went back the next time and they added more curry. So it's not overwhelming on the curry side either. And then we're gonna add a tablespoon of maple syrup. So this is pure maple syrup. You could also use honey. And then that is it. We're gonna toss this together. And then what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna roast this for 15 to 20 minutes at 325. Now, the other thing that is personal preference is I like to line my baking sheet with parchment paper. It just keeps them from getting too brown because our oven gets hot. And so you don't have to use parchment paper if you don't want to. But that maple syrup will get it to really brown, and so the sugars in the maple syrup will get them to brown. So, thanks dear. So the parchment paper just keeps them from getting too brown. And what they'll do is they'll get nice and toasted, and then after we pull them out and they sit, they'll even get a little crispier. But I promise you, this is the perfect snack. Okay, so my oven is almost ready. We're gonna go ahead and put them in. So we're gonna do 15 minutes on those. And I normally do 15 minutes and then I check them, and then I'll probably toss them and do another 5. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to show you is one of the other best snacks that you can enjoy is hummus, because it's got chickpeas, garbanzo beans, and there's nothing wrong with buying store-bought hummus, but I highly encourage you to look at the ingredient label and make sure that you're buying one that you can recognize all the stuff in it, and it doesn't have a lot of crazy ingredients that you're looking at. I can't even pronounce that. So I want to show you how easy it is to actually make it at home. But you know, when you go to a restaurant and you have that like creamy, dreamy hummus like at Bella Luna, and you're like, how in the world is it like that? And I even tried and tried and tried. When I make it at home, it just never was like Bella Luna. And I thought, what in the world? And I thought, well, it's probably because they're adding a ton of oil. Like, that's got to be why. Which they probably are adding more oil than we would tell you to add at home. But there are 2 secrets to getting creamy and dreamy hummus. Now, it takes a tiny bit more time, not a crazy amount, and you could even do this ahead of time. So what I did was I took a can of garbanzo beans or chickpeas, whatever brand that you like, and I rinsed it and drained it, and I poured it in a saucepan, and then I covered it with water, about 1 inch above the chickpeas of water. And then I put in ½ teaspoon of baking soda, and I let them boil, just kind of a simmering boil, for 20 minutes. And all I did was I got it to a boil, set the timer, and walked away. I didn't like reduce the heat or anything like that. And so when the timer went off, I turned it off and I drained them. And so now, I don't know if you guys can see this really well, the chickpeas, like the skins of the chickpeas have kind of like broken away from the chickpeas, and all I did was drain them. And so now what we're gonna do, you guys can see okay, we're gonna take these and dump them in my mini Ninja. And I had somebody ask me if we use the whole thing. She's like, do you use the skins that have broken away and everything? And I'm like, absolutely everything. And so you dump it in here. And then, okay, so the second trick to the creamy and dreamy hummus is we are going to add 2 tablespoons of very cold water. Like, this has actually been ice water, and my ice just melted, so it's really cold water. So 2 tablespoons of super cold water. Then we're gonna throw in, the recipe calls for 3 garlic cloves. I always say, just go ahead and add more. So I added about 6 garlic cloves. And then this is ½ teaspoon of ground cumin and some salt, just a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. This is 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then we're going to add ½ a lemon. And then the last thing that we're going to add is some tahini. And so it's so funny, tahini is, it's ground sesame seeds. This, well, I would show you the label, but we're clearance Dillon's shoppers, and it covered the label of the tahini. But it's basically ground sesame seeds. Now, I am asked all the time, where do you find tahini in the grocery store? It is in the Asian section. It can also sometimes be by like the soy sauce, the coconut milk, but I will tell you, we were doing the peanut video and I was right there by the almond butter, and I'm like, oh look, tahini was on the top shelf. So there you go. It's also by the almond butter, depending on your store. So this recipe calls for tahini. I've also been asked if you didn't have tahini or wanted to substitute something. If you have ever used sunflower butter, you can also substitute some of those more neutral nut butters for tahini. And then depending on the thickness of your nut butter, you could always add a little more oil or a little water to get it to be the consistency that you like. Okay, so we're adding 1/4 cup of tahini. We'll get that out of the way. Okay, and that, I believe, is everything. So we are going to buzz this up. We're good. And you guys, oh my gosh. Okay, so you have to look at how like creamy this is. Can you guys see that? Let me show you when I go to pour it here. So we're gonna do a layered Mediterranean dip. That was my oven telling me it's ready. I'm gonna just stick it right there. Okay, so this is a layered Mediterranean dip. We're gonna take all of our hummus and put it in just a shallow bowl. And so this layered Mediterranean dip, if you need something to serve people as an appetizer, like if you're going somewhere, and I've served this to my girlfriends at Bunko, and let me tell you, it disappears quick, especially if you make your hummus like this and it's creamy and dreamy. And so we've had people just shocked that they've gone from making hummus that way without doing anything to the chickpeas and then doing this boiling the chickpeas thing. And they're like, oh my gosh. Now, the other thing, like I said, if you're using almond butter, this is really the perfect consistency that we like. But if you get this done and then realize, I don't want it that thick, don't hesitate to add another tablespoon of oil or a tablespoon of water. So here in my bowl is just the hummus. And then we're going to take some diced cucumber. This is also the perfect thing to do in the summer when you can go to the farmer's market and get cucumbers, or if you're growing cucumbers and you've got fresh summer tomatoes. We typically don't buy cherry tomatoes too often right now at the store, just because we are suckers for the summer fresh tomatoes. But I do have some cherry tomatoes here. They don't look too bad, believe it or not. So then we're gonna layer it with tomatoes, and just about a cup of cherry tomatoes. Then we're gonna take some diced up red onion and sprinkle that on top. I've even had friends tell me they've made this and they're like, I've learned to just double the recipe because it goes quick. And then this is just Greek Kalamata olives. And those are just diced up and pitted. So when you go to buy the pitted ones, they won't have the pits in them. And then just a little sprinkling of feta cheese on top. We were laughing saying what we were gonna have for dinner, and we're like, we're gonna have layered Mediterranean dip for dinner. I was gonna do something else fancy, and Scott's like, nope, that's gonna be perfect. All right, so let me hold this up to show you. So there you go, layered Mediterranean dip. Now what I have got is I took pita pockets and I cut them with my pizza cutter into little triangles. And so now we have little pitas to grab our dip. And that is called the layered Mediterranean dip on the website. So good. And if you guys have questions along the way, don't hesitate to either put them in the chat. It was baking soda you put with the beans. Does it help soften the beans? Can you use it with other beans? You know what? Yes, it was baking soda, and it was ½ a teaspoon for 1 can. And yes, it helps soften them, and it helps them break down as you're mixing the hummus. And I have not tried it with other beans. I think it would do the same thing, honestly. If you try it with other beans, you're gonna have to reach back out to me and let me know. But the whole point of it is, yes, it helps break down the beans. So, it is so good. I wish we had like smell-o-vision because, yeah, I think you guys will really like it. Okay, so the next thing that I wanna show you, this happens to be kind of mentioned. It's my new favorite thing right now. Okay, so I love chocolate and peanut butter together. Like that's one of my favorite sweet treat combinations. And so we found these peanut butter cups, and we made some modifications, and we made them and we kept them in the freezer. And then we had a couple friends try them, and they were like losing their minds. And we're like, okay, well, we think it's website worthy. So we put them on the website, and everybody that has made these is like, oh my gosh, they've actually called them dangerous, which is a good thing you keep them in the freezer, because then You can just grab one occasionally, like, you know, after dinner, you just want that little like pop of peanut butter and chocolate. Oh my gosh, they're so good. And so I will tell you, for all those moms and even grandmas out there, our teenage son, like, I watched him go to the freezer and grab a couple of these and put them in his lunch, like voluntarily. And I know you moms out there are like, that's a big deal. But if a teenager voluntarily takes something that you've made like that and just, I mean, so he was happily taking 2 of these in his lunch. And so that's a really good win-win as a mom. So what I did, and so I had to do this step before we started because I only have 1 Mini Ninja, but I put 1.5 cups of almonds, and I happen to use whole almonds in the Mini Ninja. And then, but you could use sliced or slivered. And then I did 1/2 cup of rolled oats. So old-fashioned rolled oats, whatever brand you buy. So 1/2 cup of rolled oats and 1.5 cups of almonds. Now, I have had friends make these that, like one girlfriend, she was like, I ran short on almonds and I just added more oats, and she said it also worked perfectly. So for what it's worth, there's a little tidbit. Okay, so the next thing that we're gonna add, so what I did was, this is just a coarse mixture of the oats and the almonds. Dumped them in a bowl. And so we are going to add 1/4 cup of natural peanut butter. And so this peanut butter is just the Kroger creamy peanut butter. I think I've told you before, this one is my favorite because the ingredients are peanuts and salt. That's it. But we're gonna add 1/4 cup. And so this has been sitting at room temperature. So it's pretty runny, which is what I like when I'm measuring it out for recipes. And so we're gonna add that in here. And then we're going to do 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. And we're gonna do 3 tablespoons of coconut oil. And so it's melted. I just stuck it in the microwave and melted it. And then 1/8 teaspoon of salt. So just kind of a dash of salt, and then 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla. So that is all that's going in here. This is the peanut butter layer for these peanut butter cups. Now, we like to make them, you're gonna like these well enough that you're gonna wanna make them in a big muffin pan, but it's going to behoove you from, like, you know, like not going overboard if you make them in a mini muffin pan. But I promise you, they're good enough, you're gonna want them in a big one. But it's better for you just to have a little bite of a sweet treat. So we like to make them in the mini muffin pan. Now, I'm not greasing the muffin pan or anything. And so what I'm gonna do is take about a tablespoon and stick them in there and just press it in the muffin pan. And so after you get that step done, so I would go and fill this. Then I want you to take 1 1/4 cups of dark chocolate chips. And so you could pick the Ghirardelli ones are a good option. They're like 60%. We've also bought, I think it's the Hershey's brand, that's 62%. And those are both good dark chocolate options. So 1 1/4 cups of dark chocolate chips, and then 1.5 teaspoons of coconut oil, and stick it in the microwave in like 20 to 30 second increments until it's melted. And then we have melted chocolate. Then what I want you to do is take, it's really about 2 teaspoons full, you're gonna put on top of each one, and then you would fill all that. Now, before you stick them in the freezer to set, there's 2 things. We give you some options when it comes to toppings, but I'm telling you what our 2 favorites are. So this is coarse sea salt. And so we like to go and just sprinkle a couple little pieces of sea salt on there. And then this is my new thing that I absolutely love. Okay, so these are called cacao nibs. And this is like the bitter, real deal chocolate. Like they're not super sweet, but they're super crunchy. And they look like, let me see if I can put them in something so you guys can see better. They just look like little crunchy pieces of chocolate. And now people are always like, where did you get those? Well, we've seen them before at like Natural Grocer. I'm sure like Whole Foods has them. But if you can see my little TJ Maxx price tag on here, they're only $4.99 at TJ Maxx. And we just keep them in the pantry, and they are perfect on top of these to add a little chocolate crunch. But they also are Black Dream chocolate cupcakes on the website, or chocolate cake. They're fantastic on top of them. But they would be perfect on top of your ice cream. They're perfect on overnight oatmeal. Anything that you want a little bit of a chocolate pizzazz to, perfect on them. So I would highly recommend Cacao Nibs because you're getting all the nutritious dark chocolate benefits when you're buying pure cacao. So this is the real deal. This has not been processed to take out any of the nutrients of the chocolate, for what it's worth. They also have cacao powder at TJ Maxx. Okay, let's check the nuts. So, you guys, it smells so good. Okay, so what I would do is take these and just toss them, and really, they're nice and toasted. I could throw them back in there for 5 minutes, but I think I'm gonna just let them sit and cool because they're gonna get crunchier as they sit. So we're gonna let those be. Now what I would do with these peanut butter cups is I would stick these in the freezer. It will only take about 30 minutes for them to set. And then, you know, magical like a TV cooking show, we have some done. Okay, so all you have to do is take a table knife and pop them out of there. And I'm gonna put some on a plate. Can you guys see those little things? They are so good. Okay, so you would then have little chocolate peanut butter cups. And I promise you, these would be a hit at Easter. I mean, you know, they're sort of spring-like. Let's be honest, they're just a really good sweet treat. And so, but like I said, we keep them in the freezer because they really are, you can pull them out of the freezer and eat them right away. Because if they do sit at room temperature, they're just gonna get a little softer. They're still gonna taste amazing. But it helps us control the volume at which we eat them if we keep them in the freezer. So for what it's worth, I know you all are gonna go out and try the peanut butter cups because they're kind of irresistible. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to show you is we came across this recipe because as soon as spring starts to kind of come around, we have lots of asparagus recipes on Eat Real America. But we always are looking for new ones because we're so excited when spring gets here and we cannot wait to have asparagus. So I want to tell you, this would be perfect for Easter, but it's also just perfect for spring. So are there any asparagus lovers out there? Give me a thumbs up if you love asparagus. Okay, good. Not everybody does. No, I'm just kidding. So I want to tell you, if you think you don't like asparagus, I would love for you to try something. So when you come home with a bunch of asparagus, whether it's from the grocery store or from the farmer's market, this is the best way to store asparagus because this is going to keep it fresh for at least a week. And I would almost venture to say about 2 weeks. So what I did, it doesn't have to be a mason jar. It can be just a plastic container that's about this size, just a little bit bigger than your bunch of asparagus. Put a little bit of water in there, just like you're planting a flower. And so at least have the stem ends of the asparagus sitting in the water. And then just stick it in your refrigerator, just like that. And so I promise you, now you will have to check it because after a few days, the water will disappear. So you may need to add a little bit more water in there. But that will keep them nice and crisp until you're ready to eat them. Now, our go-to thing with asparagus, this is like our no-brainer thing that we do all the time, is I cut it up into about 2-inch pieces. Now, sometimes you have to cut the stem end off the asparagus. Now, I will tell you, we buy it from the farmer's market, and it's so fresh and like just picked that typically you don't have to cut the end off. But if you're buying it at Dillon's or the grocery store, a lot of times you're gonna have to trim the end just because it's gonna be tough. So once I trim the end, then I cut it into about 2-inch pieces, put it in a bowl with some salt, pepper, and olive oil, and we roast it just like this on a baking sheet at 400 degrees. Now, I will tell you, you know, I'm like a huge fanatic of roasting vegetables. And most vegetables, I will always tell you to roast for 15 to 20 minutes. Now, asparagus, I only want you to roast it for 10. So at 10 minutes, I promise you, it's gonna be just right. Because asparagus should not be soggy. Like, asparagus should not be mushy. I grew up thinking that was how my parents did it, and that was not the way asparagus should be. It should have kind of a crisp, tender consistency. But at 10 minutes, I promise you it'll be just right. Now, of course, if you like it a little softer, throw it in for a couple more minutes, but 10 minutes is about ideal. So that's what I did for this recipe. This is called, we just added it to the website. It's called the Spring Asparagus Farro Salad. So all I did, this was one bunch of asparagus, and I roasted it, and we've let it cool to room temperature. And so if you have not yet discovered, it's called farro. I'm gonna show you. So this, and here's the Kroger brand. So this is kind of like a cross between like barley and rice. Like, I love it because it's a whole grain. Now, it's not gluten-free, but it is a whole grain, and it's almost like a puffier piece of rice, and it's got this like awesome chewy tender consistency. I love farro. Like, I love it way more than rice. It's one of my favorites. Now I will tell you, depending on the brand that you buy, some farro recipe, or when you go to use the directions on the back, they will tell you to cook it like rice. They will tell you to add the water, add the farro, bring it to a boil, reduce heat, simmer, and let it absorb all the liquid. Now, I'm here to tell you that that is not necessarily always correct. You should cook it like pasta for it to still have that kind of chewy consistency and not be too mushy. So what I would want you to do is put your water and your farro, bring it to a boil, set the timer for 15 minutes, reduce it to a simmer, cover it, and when 15 minutes goes off, I want you to taste it, and it should be like tender but still a little chewy. Really, 15 minutes is always what I cook it at. Always, always, always. And I drain it, drain the water off, and then bam, go. You're ready to roll. So that is what I always tell people to do with farro. So don't necessarily always believe the instructions. Not that you're gonna have like these detrimental results. It's just gonna be mushier than, I feel like it's really best if it's not quite that mushy. So then what I did, so this recipe called for half a cup of farro, and then I did about 2 cups of water. Like I said, I cooked it for 15 minutes, and then I drained it off. And then, so half a cup of farro is basically gonna double. You're gonna put a little bit more than a cup. And so I put this in this bowl, and the farro has cooled. And then I have added, I think it was about 1/3 cup of dried cranberries, 3 green onions sliced, a couple tablespoons of feta cheese, and 1/3 cup of walnuts. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to toss in all of our roasted asparagus. And you guys, this salad is really good leftover, and it would be really, really good for Easter. Because it's kind of like spring in a bowl. Okay. So then you're gonna make a super simple dressing. Okay, I forgot to tell you one thing. When I roasted the asparagus, now this is just gonna add even more flavor to this recipe, but if you do not have this, I don't want you to not make the recipe because you do not have this. This is a spice called za'atar. It's spelled Z-A-A-T-A-R. And we get it from the Spice Merchant. And it's this Middle Eastern spice that we love. We love it on roasted vegetables. We love it on so many things. It is just really, really flavor loaded and good. If you don't have za'atar, you could use lemon pepper seasoning, or you can just skip it. Like sumac, if you've ever heard of sumac, that's another good substitute, but honestly, lemon pepper seasoning would do the job, or just skip it because the dressing and all the flavors in this salad is gonna be good enough. Za'atar is not a deal breaker. But definitely something worth looking into if you're ever around the Spice Merchant. I would highly recommend you getting za'atar because we have never found this at Dillon's or Walmart or Natural Grocer even, so it is kind of a Spice Merchant thing, but it's definitely worth seeking out. Okay, so here we have our bowl with all the stuff. We're gonna add we're gonna make a quick dressing, and then we're gonna add some lemon zest. Okay, so there was a time when we would find all these recipes with lemon zest, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Who is gonna grate lemon peel and put it and take the effort to do that? And what we decided to do was we were gonna try it. So we got a microplane zester, and I had no idea the endless possibilities for this bad boy, because one of my other favorite things to do with this is grate Parmesan cheese. Like, I like this better than my like regular grater, because I can hold it in my hand and I just take my Parmesan cheese block and go to town. I love this thing. And so we thought, well, we have the microplane zester. Guess we should try doing the lemon zest or any citrus zest. So all you do, I rinsed off my lemon, and all you do is take this little zester and you just start, like, you hold your lemon in one hand, do this in the other. Now the cool thing about this zester is it holds everything in it. Well, I'll show you. And so you want about a teaspoon of lemon zest. See, like, it holds all the lemon zest in there until you're ready to dump it in your bowl. And so we're gonna dump it in the bowl. And so this is gonna add this like lemony spring pop of flavor to this. All right, so I'm gonna show you this super quick dressing. In my mason jar is 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And then we're going to add, oh, I just got Dijon mustard on the counter. We're gonna add 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. And then we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. And we're gonna dump all this dressing in this bowl, and the faro is gonna soak it up. And then this is just 1/4 teaspoon of salt and pepper. And I would have cut that lemon that I zested in half. I already had one cut in half, but I would just cut it in half and use half of it. So you want about 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And that is it. You're gonna shake that up. And this salad, it's one of those salads that like the flavors are even better the next day, because we've made it a couple times now and we're like, still awesome the next day. So then you're gonna stir all this together. And if you were serving this for Easter, I would probably wait and sprinkle the 2 tablespoons of feta cheese on top just to make it a little prettier. But here is your spring asparagus faro salad. And you guys, this is so good because of all the different, like, you've got the crunchy texture of the walnuts and the dried cranberries, and then the asparagus and the faro. It is so yummy. And I know it would be a hit if you served it for family or friends on Easter. We've gotten really good rave reviews from it. So I would love for you to check that out. But if you don't do anything else, then go on Eat Real America and look at our other asparagus recipes, because we've got some really good ones. And if you've never tried asparagus before, I would highly recommend just try roasting it. And I always tell people, and you guys are gonna think I'm ridiculous for saying this, have you ever heard, in our coaching tip on asparagus, have you ever heard people talk about how you smell it later? Nod your head if you know what I'm talking about. You've heard this. Okay, when we first started eating asparagus, my husband was like, well, we gotta talk to people about that. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, you know how when you use the restroom, you can smell after you eat asparagus. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but apparently some people can't smell it. But what is happening is the sulfur compound in asparagus actually creates this odor when it hits oxygen. So for what it's worth, it's a real thing, but please don't let that discourage you from eating asparagus. And if you want to know more about it, then check out our coaching tip. But every time I do an in-person demo and I use asparagus, somebody in the room always asks me that question. So I thought, we'll just cut to the chase and I'll just tell you about it. Can you substitute another nut for walnuts? Absolutely. Almonds would be fantastic in there. Pecans would be fantastic in there. Pistachios, pine nuts, those are a little pricier. Almonds would probably be my next go-to because you'd still get the crunch, and yep, it would still be fantastic with that. Now, I have to throw out the keyword because this is our last class. It's eat real food. So it's actually 3 keywords, but eat real food is the keyword for this video. Does anybody have any questions other than the ones you've already asked? I wish you all were here to eat dinner with us. That is what I wish. because you could have salad, Mediterranean dip, and then you would get to try the chocolate peanut butter cups. So I would love for you guys to at least try something that we made. All the links were in what Jenny sent out. And I really hope that the next time I get to see you all, I mean, I'd love to see you virtually, but I'd really love to see you all in person as we hopefully continue to do more programs in the future. Any other questions? Since it's our last class, anything that anybody is wondering, or we probably have a coaching tip about it on Eat Real America. Or if there's a food somebody's wondering, what the heck do you do with that? Any vegetable that you're thinking, no way, I have no idea. Nothing? Well, you know where I am. If you guys ever need to email me, ask any questions, you can always submit a question through the website, but you also can email me directly. And I have had so much fun with you. You all have like made this whole post-COVID world bearable for me, because I thought, what am I gonna do if I don't get to be in front of people and do cooking demos? And you guys have made it so much better. And you really make me happy when you turn your cameras on. So at least we got to that, because it makes it so I don't feel like I'm staring at a computer and doing this. But I hope that you guys enjoy the recipes and enjoy the ideas. What else did somebody say? Thank you so much. I hope I've taught you a few things here and there, or at least inspired you to do something different. And just keep it simple and focus on real food. That, you know, that's my main message. And, you know, I don't overcomplicate it. Like, just keep it simple. And I promise you, you will have success. We have so many success stories of people that just have like totally changed their lives by really focusing on real food. And then they're surprised that they like things that they've gone their whole life thinking that they didn't like. But so I would love for you guys to try some of these ideas. And then please let me know what you think, how you're doing. And of course, always, if you have questions, I'm here. So, but thank you all. Thank you, Jenny, for doing the program and putting the ice cream banana picture behind you today to keep with our theme. But I appreciate all of you. So thank you. And I hope everybody enjoys watching the replay.
Thank you, Krista. Bye.
Thank you all.